Thanks for being here, guys. So today we have Jessica and Brady Sammis with ERA Advantage Realty. So you guys work as a team, right? Now, do you guys do separate listing and buyers agents, or how do you guys operate?
So we thank you for having us. By the way, we're welcome. Super excited to be here. By the way,
it's gonna be fun.
Love to do this type of thing. So Brady and I, we really like to play off of each other's strengths.
Yep.
And I do the things that he doesn't like to do, and vice versa. So it works pretty well.
Nice.
But I would say for the most part, it seems like, I guess if you looked at percentages, I seem to deal with more buyers and Brady seems to deal with more sellers. But every listing that we have, we both go in on it.
Kind of work on it together?
Yes.
Okay.
We kind of both take different jobs, and that's kind of how we go apart.
Yeah, I mean, we both do a little bit of listings and a little bit of buyers work together. Typically, one of us takes the lead, but the other one's always in the game and knows what's going on, so we can always jump in if we need to.
Gotcha.
And we kind of just, like she said, play off each other's strengths.
Okay. Now, you guys are based in Port Charlotte, but what other areas are you kind of focused on or looking into? I mean, just, kind of wherever it takes you. But, I mean, what areas do you see as kind of being like a hotter area or beginning to become more popular?
So we work primarily at Port Charlotte, Placida, Venice, Punta Gorda.
Yeah, basically everywhere from Venice to Punta Gorda.
Yep.
Anything in between those.
But we love working very, very locally, obviously, because we know that area best. And I do think as far as growth goes, all of those areas are crazy growing.
Yeah.
I think if you look up some statistics, it'll tell you that it's one of the fastest growing places.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I've been here for about 4 years from now. I moved from California and lived in Oklahoma City for a little while. I don't know why.
Great move, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. So, no, and I love it here, but it's kind of interesting, though, because, I've been all up and down the West Coast of Florida and really haven't gone to the East Coast that much. But you look at, Naples versus, Venice and Port Charlotte and Tampa, and these areas are all so different, the culture and just the layout of the city. But it seems like Tampa and St. Pete was really popular. Naples was kind of popular, but then it's like everyone kind of migrated to more Port Charlotte, Punta Gorda, because they were a little bit less expensive. I don't know if that's the case now, but it's becoming a little more equal. Is that kind of what you're seeing? Or?
Yes, definitely. So we talk about this all the time. I think that our core area, Port Charlotte, Placida, those areas have really been actually a little undervalued for such a long time.
Yeah.
Like you can't live that close to the water with that kind of money anywhere else.
Yeah,
So I think people are finding out about our little secret here is the thing. So
because of people like me. Well, that's exactly what happened because, coming from California when I first got here, almost 4 years ago, I was like, why is it so cheap here? Yeah, I couldn't understand it. I mean, it was ridiculous, but it was like, I don't even know the square foot of a house, but 2,000, whatever it was, 2,100 square feet was like 350,000. That same house in California would be like 800,000.
Oh yeah.
Wouldn't it be that much now here too, as opposed to 4 years ago?
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, it's definitely changing. Yeah, for sure.
But in a good way. I mean, this area is honestly a great place to live. It makes our job easier to sell it because we honestly
paradise.
There are so many great things about this area.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing I think that we kind of really take pride in is we moved here about 6 years ago. And that first year or two, it's a little bit different. We moved from Illinois, so we moved across the country.
Yep.
And we really like to help people get settled in and feel comfortable living here. Like that's one of our main things that we really shoot and strive for, I think, is to make people feel comfortable in their new home because a lot of people are moving from out of state,
Yeah, it's unbelievable because, being a lender, probably 90 to 95% of my clients are from out of state.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys saw this one graphic, but I'll try and find it and get it to you guys. Maybe we can kind of talk about it on one of these one time. But they actually it was like a dot of all the families that have moved to Florida over a period of, and it was kind of like a rapid progression over a period of like a year or so.
Yeah.
And what states they came from. And it was just like all these dots coming down to Florida. It was unbelievable how many people were moving here and still are. So let's talk.
Let me talk one more thing on that. So I study all these things because we really get into like our YouTube channel and all that stuff.
Yep.
So this, not just here where we are, but this is an awesome thing. Florida in general, the growth that we've had, I think it was either 20 to 21 or 21 to 22. We have gained, I think it was like something like 350,000 new residents, which is the same as the town of Buffalo, New York. So we basically had Buffalo, New York move down to Florida. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's awesome,
and you can tell by the traffic has definitely grown. But the state is doing so well. That's another positive thing about it, and attractive thing is that they're constantly doing construction to improve everything. I mean, the roads, the freeways, and the fact that they built the bridge in, Sanibel within a matter of days.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
Hurricane
It's amazing.
Was incredible. So let's talk about, and I guess, either of you can answer this, but I guess you do more listings, Brady. So, homes that are, you listed a home for sale. So how do you determine what price to sell a house at? And also, how do you assure that the house will be priced fairly and will maximize the price of the seller, but, obviously move fairly quickly?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different things that we put into pricing a home, location being one, how well the home's been taken care of, how well it's been updated, things like that. But typically what we do, it's kind of nice that we have two of us, right? So when we get listings, you're kind of getting like two for the price of one type of deal, because I'll go run my numbers. We look at square footage, year built, like I said, updates, different things. We can plug them into our system. We can run what similar homes have sold for recently and come up with a good range. We also have some back-end systems that kind of run some algorithms and give us some other numbers, so we can make sure that what we're putting out there is, there's some other things that we can equate them to. And then she'll run her own numbers too. So typically we come up with
represented a buyer. She can kind of do
And even if she's wanting to, find the value for the seller, maybe she comes up with a value of 450 and I come up with 430, and then we can kind of get together and see where those differences are, and we kind of really try to lock it in. But it's really important to be competitively priced. You don't want to price it too high, or you're just not going to get any action, and it's just not worth it. Yeah,
it's kind of tough with this market, given the fact that it's so volatile too. So I was kind of wondering how that plays into it. So I didn't really have this as something, to talk about, but so I'm going to throw a curveball at you. Yeah. But in this kind of market, it seems like we have people that are wanting to sell their house, but they decided not to, or if they do sell it, they still have the mindset of, I want to get this specific price for it, when those prices may no longer be there. I mean, are you guys kind of seeing that now, or?
I think a little bit we are. I think we're still kind of trying to put the pieces back together after the hurricane. So it's kind of still a little, like you said, volatile.
Yep. Trial and error.
Well, hurricane or not, yes, hurricane, that's a whole other can of worms, obviously. But side note on that, I feel like I'm amazed every day by how quickly the community has come together. Like, it's amazing. It's been an amazing thing to see. But hurricane aside, we had such a crazy market for such a while. Yeah. And I think that a lot of sellers really got to a point where they're just really unrealistic about the prices of their home. Yep. And that's unfortunate, because people just have these perspectives and then their mindsets are just way off.
It's emotional too. It's their house.
It is. It is. Subjective, yes.
They've been there 100%. For years.
Yeah. But I think that's a lot of why we see, reduced prices. I think that's exactly just what it is, that people just were not realistic with.
Maybe a little too greedy with their initial starting price.
Yeah, I mean, demand has definitely come off, but the fact is there's no inventory, and so prices may have dropped a little bit, but probably, and this is my opinion, that list prices are probably still a little too high. The actual value of the house has not dropped so much.
Right.
So people, sellers are just going to have to to reevaluate what they're going to sell their house for.
There's still buyers out there. I mean, we put 3 or 4 houses under contract last week. I mean, it took about 3 weeks after the hurricane, but then they come out and they're ready to go. Yeah. So people still want to move here. That's for sure.
Yeah, and one thing that I kind of like you and you guys. I mean, I like to do research and find out kind of what's going on and why things are the way they are, and looked at not just in Florida.
Fun, by the way. I just love doing it. I like geek out on that stuff.
Fun. Well, you see what I post on Facebook.
And I know you do too. Your content is amazing. We love it. We talk about it all the time.
I love this stuff. So, but you look at what home prices have done in like Katrina, when it hit New Orleans. And I was going, okay, well, what happened with home prices there? What is that going to be like in Fort Myers? Because, I don't know if it was as bad. I mean, the hurricane was almost as strong,
Right.
but still significant damage. But home prices in New Orleans actually appreciated after Katrina, which I was shocked. But I guess if you think about it, home prices could be depressed. There's a lot of damaged homes that got to be fixed. So you probably have a lot of buyers that come in and want to buy things on the cheap.
Yeah,
so that's going to be
seeing
supportive.
a little bit of that.
Are you?
Yeah. And honestly, right after Ian hit, we were like nervous. We're like, what is going to happen now?
Yeah.
But we had a good talk with a colleague in our office who had been through Charlie, and he said it actually stimulated the market last time. It's going to take a bit because we have to deal with insurance claims and things like that. Yeah. But he said that it actually stimulated, and that made me feel good. I'm like,
yeah, and it's kind of like this is a separate issue, but I could guess it can have the same impact, is, the fact that rates went up so high, prices went up so high.
Right.
And, every step of the way, and I actually talk to clients about this that say, oh, I want to wait for lower rates. I'm like, okay, well, think about where we started at 2.5%. How many times along that point did you say,
I'm going to wait.
Yeah, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait. Yeah, they just kept going up. So, you just don't know where they're going to end up. But
that's a good point.
I think, and same with the hurricane, I think people were initially shocked.
Yeah.
What do I do? What's going to happen? Same thing with rates and prices. I'm shocked they went up this much. What do I do?
Yeah.
But I think now they're kind of going, okay, this could be the new reality.
Right.
Yep.
And I think now people are just going, they're probably going to come down, but they're not going to go down 2.5%.
Right.
They may go down to 5%. Is it worth waiting? Probably not if I can get the house that I want right now.
Yeah.
So that's why my phone's been ringing lately a lot more than it has.
Yeah.
When, we first hit like 5% and kept going up like that. I think people were so shocked they're not doing anything.
Yeah. I agree.
Well,
Brady, you just had a little podcast playing in the office before we got here, when I think it was maybe Jared James or something talking about rates in the market. Mm-hmm. Do you remember what it was?
No.
So he was saying just, everybody says this is a crazy market because of the rates.
Yeah.
And he just basically explained, well, listen, exactly what you just said.
Yep.
8 months ago, they started at 2%.
Oh, yeah.
And now it is where it is. But you ask anybody that was buying houses 10, 15, even more years ago, in the 80s, more so.
17, 18%.
Yeah, I think you said
Exactly.
the average over the last 30, 40 years is 8
or 9%. Yep.
something like that. So sitting
So
at
it's-
7, 6, 7, still not the end of the world.
Yeah.
I think my dad told me his first interest rate was like 12% or something.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of hard to believe that, people would buy houses at
I
that level,
know.
but they did.
Yeah, well, you had to buy a house,
Yeah. Yep. So, yeah, and that's the thing.
Has cash, so.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, you're not buying, a car or, some other luxury. I mean, you're buying a place to live.
Right.
And it's like, you have an idea of the, specific place you want to live, the type of house you want, and, you need to buy when it's available.
Right.
Yep.
And it's available now. So when rates drop, if they drop, and if prices do go down, you're going to have a flood of buyers back in the market.
Right.
So, okay, so we got really off track with that, but that was getting.
Well, when all the buyers come, then the market's going to be more competitive too. So it's
it's
are
going
the
to
prices going to come up? Does the interest rate make that much of a difference?
and it's going to go back to the way it was before, where I had at one time I think I had 30 clients that were pre-approved and they couldn't find homes.
Yeah.
And they would put multiple offers on, and some of them dropped out because they just said this is ridiculous.
They're getting beat up.
I can't find a house. So.
Unfortunately.
and then you have to settle for something you don't want.
Yeah.
Potentially.
Well,
right.
Yeah,
So-
that's a good point because I read somewhere that it was really high. It was like 40% of recent buyers over the last year to year and a half kind of regretted their purchase.
Oh, yeah.
Because
Buyer's remorse.
they paid too high of a price. They paid way over list. They waived an inspection. just crazy stuff.
Yeah. Or they end up with the most desperate situation, which is renting. And right now, rentals
It's even
are
worse.
insane.
Yeah.
Like I feel so bad for people that's their only choice because it's rough.
Yeah, and if you guys or anyone watching needs a buy versus rent scenario, and I think I talked to Paul in your office about that, but that's a really good like 1 or 2 pager to send to clients that I prefer to rent now. I'm going to wait till good time. The amount of money that they're losing out on with even projections of 4% per year appreciation in
Yeah.
the real estate market. They're losing out a ton of money.
Well, I mean, you just add up all the rent for the year, and then you're like,
yeah, and that's going to go up each and every year.
oh yeah.
Yeah. Who knows what minimum increase on that's going to be? But it's
Well,
gonna be
and there's
large.
programs for people that maybe don't have that down payment, right? You don't have to put 20% down every time you buy a house anymore.
Hometown
so-
Heroes up to 25,000 down payment assistance. I mean that's huge. So yeah, and that's one of the 3 programs that we kind of talked about in your office there that is a great marketing item for people that are looking to buy a house now. So it's huge for those guys.
Absolutely.
So one thing I also wanted to ask is about the sales history of a home. Is that important that you guys kind of look at the history of I mean, not just price, but I don't know if it is or not, and I'm not even sure how that would matter that much, but I was just that was mainly just
Yeah, so I think it's important to look at it. I don't know that in this market that it makes a whole lot of difference, like you said, with price, because in the past 3 years, prices have almost doubled on a lot of places.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say, well, he only bought it for $200,000. Why am I paying $400,000? That's just the way the market is. We can't really change that. Right. If you don't buy it, someone else is going to buy it for that $400,000.
Yeah, and we were talking about this off air too. Is that compared to other markets like where I came from in California, San Francisco.
Yep.
Florida is still way cheaper than those markets, and that's why people are moving here because we're still priced well below those hotter markets. So even though prices have gone up that much, it's still significantly below some of the hotter markets.
And also the cost of living is actually very reasonable here.
No state income taxes.
I know, it's huge.
Well, California's like 13%, state income tax.
Yeah, well, we've got a lot of great things going for us here in the state too.
Yep.
That they've worked out. Like just so you know, they're putting no tax on all like baby child items here. I think that they're like continuing that. There's a couple other things that the governor has in place. So
one thing with the sales history that I look at is if it's been sold like multiple times. So if it's getting sold every 1 or 2 years over and over again, is there something wrong? Like then it makes me look a little deeper. Is there something wrong with this property? Why are people buying it and then leaving so fast? Which that doesn't come out a whole lot. But if I see a long list of sales history, like it's selling every couple of years, it makes me kind of think and wonder why this is. Is there something across the street? Is the street too busy? So that would be the one thing I kind of look at with sales history. Otherwise, it doesn't really play a huge role in my.
And you'd be surprised that a lot of our buyers they have already looked it up.
Oh yeah,
they're letting us know what the person before paid for, and it's one of those situations
public
now.
information,
Yeah,
so
and in the
you can find
past, I would say before the little shift that we've had in the market, it was pretty frustrating.
Yeah, in a more stable market, it might be
anything
something you look at more.
Yeah.
But when it's jumped as crazy as it has in the
Yeah.
past 3 years, it's hard to justify.
So let's see. I had a question about seller concession when buying a home. So what exactly is a seller concession and what could it be used for? So maybe an example or something.
Yeah, so a seller concession would basically be you're purchasing a home for, let's say, $500,000, but you're having trouble maybe coming up with some cash to cover your closing costs, right?
Yep.
So you want to buy the house, you offer them full price, but you ask them for, let's say, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 in a seller concession. That would mean at closing, the seller's taking part of their proceeds, giving it back to the buyer to cover those initial closing costs potentially. And I think you can use them for closing costs. You could probably use them for repairs depending on the loan that you might be getting. And you can, I think, and this would be a better question for you, but I think you can even use it to buy down your interest rate potentially depending on what type of loan you're going through.
Yeah, you definitely can. I mean, if you have to pay like 1 point, on a, to get a specific rate, you can basically use that to pay off that point. So 1 point equals 1% of the loan amount.
Right.
So which is basically a fee that we have to pay investors to get that specific rate.
Right,
So
right.
yeah. So and that's very important in this market too. So as opposed to, getting a rate of maybe 7%, you could buy it down to 6%.
Yep.
If you can get that seller concession and have a significant savings. So, yep. So
there's definitely benefits to using a seller concession. It just depends on what situation you're in.
Yeah, and this is the kind
vary.
of market where it's possible.
Right.
Before 6 months or a year ago, when the market was so hot, there's no chance you're getting a seller concession.
And it was rough. It was rough for our buyers.
Yeah.
It really was.
We bought our house almost 3 years ago, and we ended up getting we were getting an FHA loan, and I think the maximum we could get was the 3%. So we offered them actually over asking price for the house because we wanted that concession to help us pay for that initial cost up front, because the closing costs can add up.
Yeah.
And sometimes they come to a surprise as people. So
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say. So, kind of like we talked about on, what to look for, when selling a house, location, how do you value a house? That's why it's so important to use a realtor, because I almost hate doing loans where they don't have realtors involved, because I think it was the last one that I did. I just said, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it again, because it was just, they just didn't understand.
Well, you got to be the realtor too, probably.
Well, yeah. And, it's kind of a conflict of interest. So there's a lot of stuff that I'm really not supposed to be doing. So we had to get a title company to kind of fill out the contract. Yeah. And I'm like, I'll never do that again.
Yeah. I don't
Yep. So, and then let's see. Well, let's switch to the buyer side. Mm-hmm. So, do you recommend that a buyer get pre-approved when looking for a house? I know that you guys do.
Absolutely. Of course.
Yeah. So
we typically send them to you. So.
Yeah, only to me. So now, so what are the benefits mainly? I mean, what do you guys say if if a buyer calls you up and basically says, I just want to look at houses, get an idea of kind of what I'm looking at before I get pre-approved? So
here's our main thing. We don't want to start looking at specific houses until we know how much you can afford. Yep. I mean, it's a waste of time.
Yeah, exactly.
So the buyers just really need to know where they're at with everything and know that they're qualified and able to go buy a house, because we love working with people. We love building relationships and rapport, but we also have a family and we value our time as well. Yep. So yeah, and we wouldn't go look at a house until we were pre-approved either. So
yeah, it's almost like you're doing a disservice to the client if you don't get them pre-approved, because you have no idea what they qualify for, what you can show them.
Right.
Because a lot of probably 99% of the clients that call me up, they all think that lenders pre-approve on price, which we don't.
Right.
We pre-approve on monthly payment.
Yeah.
So it not only depends. Yeah. It can vary. If you're in a flood zone, they could tack on an extra $100 to $200 a month in flood insurance, depending on what rate you get, whether or not you buy down that rate, you could qualify for different homes. And so I'll do a presentation where I'll show people that, this is how we basically qualify. You can have one house of $500,000, another one that's $500,000. One has double, flood insurance, or has flood insurance. The other one doesn't. One has double the homeowner's insurance. Then the other one does. One has an HOA. The other one doesn't. So you could qualify on one, but not the other.
Right. And the thing is that buyers want to know what they're going to be paying each month. Like that's the most important thing. That's how they budget their money. It just makes sense.
Yeah.
But the other thing to keep in mind and remind our buyers is that, I lost my train of thought.
That's all right.
That's all right. We can edit that.
One thing that I think a pre-approval is really important for, especially in this market, is
rates.
I thought of it.
One for rates, you can lock in your rate somewhat potentially with the pre-approval, but also if you go out and you're pre-approved and you're looking at houses and you find one that you like, if you don't have that pre-approval, they're not going to take your offer, right? No. They're gonna say, well, we're going to hold off. Once you get pre-approved, then it might take three days to get that approval. Usually you guys can do it faster than that, but let's say it does take 2 or 3 days. Yeah. Someone else makes an offer, they beat you out on the house that you really wanted. Yeah. So being unprepared hurt you, right? Because you saw that home, you lost out on it. Yeah. Right, and then you're not going to find that one again, and you're going to be kicking yourself.
Yeah, and it's kind of like you said, we can move very fast on doing a pre-approval, but sometimes we have self-employed income, or we have somebody that's had they are starting a new job, they don't have an employment letter yet. We're going to get that from the employer. So it could take a week potentially if we don't have the right documents. And there's nothing we can do until we have those documents. So it's extremely important to get pre-approved.
Yeah, and I love the fact that literally, I think realtors have to put this in, but every time you see a house listing, it always says in the realtor remarks, letter of pre-approval or proof of funds is like you have to send it with the offer. Yeah. So that's a great point to tell the buyers so that they understand the importance of this. Yeah. Like we're not just
right, and we represent listings too, right? Yeah. So when we get an offer on one of our listings, we're not going to take it super seriously until we see that these people have the ability to actually pay for the house, because you don't want to take the house off the market and lose out on other potential buyers if that person really can't do it. Yeah. And just because they think or say they can do it doesn't mean that there aren't other factors that are preventing them from being able to come up with that amount of money.
Yeah, and a lot of clients, from my experience, they kind of misunderstand how we, not only they think that we pre-approve on price as opposed to monthly payment, but they think that even though they're unemployed, the fact that they've got $300,000 in the bank, that it's easy. I've got 300 grand in the bank. I can get pre-approved. Well, that doesn't matter to us. We don't care about necessarily assets. We care about income.
Right.
That's how we have to qualify you.
Right.
So it's really, and they just don't know the rules.
Right.
That we have to look as a lender.
Yeah, and a big part of what we really try to do, and I know you try to do it too, is just educate people on this so that they know. Because people usually don't know. I don't think before we started working in real estate that we would have known a lot of these things. Why would we? So the education is huge.
Yep. Definitely is. We kind of touched on this a little bit, but we always hear that location is always important. So, but I know some of the things that we consider to be, that would make it a great location, good schools. But what are some of the factors that you guys look at when you have a client that's looking for a house in a specific area?
So really, one thing is that it's really based on the buyer and their needs. And we really like to ask to make sure that we check those boxes for them, because if they work, they're looking for a house in Northport, but they work in Sarasota, they're going to want to be close to 75, which is completely doable in Northport because it's close to 75. And, just things that are important to them. If they have kids, they might want to be closer to the beach or parks or things like that. So very personalized. But from a very objective point of view, if people are just wanting to know, is this going to go up in value? Is it going to keep its value? Places that are probably closer to the beach are going to, hold better value. Closer to the water, which is mainly all of the areas that we serve, which makes it easy for us. And, things that they're looking for. Another thing to think about for, Brady and I have talked about doing a short-term rental here because there's great value in that.
Yep.
So we thought about areas that are close to the beach because, people that are coming to visit love to be there, but also maybe a good proximity to the airport or something like that. So that would be something that would, and downtown Punta Gorda, historic.
But not
Punta
too
Gorda.
close to the airport.
Right, exactly. But downtown Punta Gorda is a beautiful historic place. So it really just comes down to what that person
what they're
is
looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess it's kind of like with a lender, you got to ask the right questions. You got to know what to ask because. If you ask them, they may not know what's important, so they don't know. They don't know what to tell you.
Exactly.
So that's another reason to have a good realtor, so they can help you find a good
that's the main thing. You ask questions, figure out what they need, and then we know the area well enough to where we can say, hey,
point out certain areas.
These areas are going to be more beneficial or more, I don't know the right word for it, but more apt to fill your needs for what you're looking for. We really like and we really promote I guess it's in between Port Charlotte and Inglewood. It's like South Gulf Cove, Rotunda West, East Inglewood, Placida area. I think it's kind of a hidden gem.
Yeah.
It's very underdeveloped for being that close to the water.
I live here and I went down there and I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool.
Amazing.
People come down there and they're like, you're this close to the water and there's no
I had no
houses.
idea. Yeah, it was pretty amazing.
It's
really I'm not even sure why I went down that way, but I think there's a big, I don't even know what it was. There's a big office down there somewhere. I had to go down there for some reason, but I passed that. I went to Placida and I was like, man, this is an amazing area.
So that's where we live, and we live 5 minutes down the road from Boca Grande, which is the best island ever. They're repairing it. They're repairing it right now.
It's the greatest ever.
It really is. So we like to kind of promote that because that's another thing. If people want to know objectively, is this going to keep its value / go up in value? Yeah. Yes, it absolutely is. So we really pride ourselves on knowing the area and being able to, point out these places.
Before I forget, the one thing I've always wondered about, and I just now thought about it. So, location is important, house is important, proximity to, airport, beach, stuff like that. But what about neighbors, though? Because that could make or break a neighborhood. Do you guys I know you can't really interview neighbors, but how do you get an idea of kind of what the neighborhood is like with regard to people who live there?
Well, it's funny because we just put a house under contract and I just so happen to know that road very well. Mm-hmm. And my client asked, what are these neighbors like? What are these neighbors like? And we're like, let's do some investigating for you.
A little door knocking.
But yeah, people do ask that question, which and it is important.
Yeah, it's very important.
But I guess you kind of just have to. Well, we like to know the area as much as we can. We can't know specific neighbors. That's just not something we can do. But
yeah, I mean, you could talk to 2 or 3.
Yeah, you could definitely do that.
20 that live there, and get a pretty good idea of kind of what's going on.
And you can hopefully just get at least a sense of the area.
Driving through,
from
you
the
get a
looks
sense.
of it. I guess you're judging a book by its cover, but when you're on a street, you're like, oh, this, people are.
Yeah, I actually was
and,
showing 4 or 5 houses to a couple last week, and it was 3 or 4 different neighborhoods. They're all in the very close proximity to each other, but they're different neighborhoods. And when we got out of the car, they would say, we actually like this neighborhood better, or this road better than the last one, or maybe vice versa. We don't like this one quite as much as the last one. Maybe it's because people have trucks and trailers and boats in their yard, or maybe they're not keeping up with their lawn maintenance, certain things like that. Yep. But typically when you go to the house, you can kind of see that.
We get that a lot from people just talking about specific, like, I like this neighborhood, I like this area. Yeah. But another thing that's nice is also knowing the area, but places that have deed restrictions and things like that. Sometimes that is really important to people. And so, we might push them more to like the Rotunda area because they're very deed restricted. You have to have your grass cut just so and all the things, and no boats in the driveway and things like that. Now, if that's not your cup of tea, we can take you right across the street to South Gulf Cove, which it's okay to park your boat in your driveway and things like that. And then we can, if people have kids, like we can say, well, this is not, you can kind of help people they'll just walk around and, get a sense.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. And then, what else? Well, I guess, so how do you determine how much a buyer should offer a house? It's kind of the same thing we talked about when, figuring out what to sell a house for. I guess it's, just that in reverse. But I assume you, kind of look at, well, first of all, see what the buyer can afford, how much they're willing to pay, how much over list they're willing to pay, if that's the case. But what is the process of figuring out, what number to put on a contract and offer?
Well, I feel like every seller probably thinks their house is worth a little bit more than what's worth, and every buyer that's coming to buy that house probably thinks it's worth less than what you're asking, right? So you kind of got to walk that fine line. And it does depend on how much they can afford and things like that. But you also got to look at the market and what the market's doing, right? So a year ago, the market was red hot, hotter than anything we've ever seen. We were putting offers in the day after the listing went on the market, and we were competing with 10, 12 other people. Yeah. And we were $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 over asking price with about the best possible cash terms you could do, and we were still getting beat. Yeah. So that's changed a little bit now, but really the main thing is keeping up with the market and knowing the market good enough to know that, hey, maybe we can get a little bit of a discount now. Or you were just telling us about this sold program. So maybe you could offer full price and get a little bit of that money back in a seller concession to buy down your rate. So there's always different options, but I think the biggest thing is, where's the market at? What's the market doing? Yep. This is how we have to react based on what the market conditions are. Yep.
So that kind of leads me to the last question we have, right? Do you have something you want to add?
I was going to add just something that's really good, again, is knowing the market. But almost every time when we go show a house, and if we have buyers that are super interested, we say we are going to go home and run comps for you. And so that means that you are going and, saying, well, here's all this similar criteria, and what have these similar criteria homes sold for within the past. We like to go 60 days now just because of the way the market has changed so much.
Pretty volatile.
But that will give them an idea, like, okay, this is a good price. This makes sense to me. I'm not overpaying or underpaying, So we use numbers too.
Okay. So probably the last question I have here is, do you, given where we've been and where we are now with regard to prices and rates and, after the hurricane and what else could possibly happen in this market, do you guys consider now a good time to buy still, or?
I do, absolutely. Yeah. I think I would say summertime kind of helped us feel like we can now negotiate. Yeah. Like, we weren't able to do that for such a long time because, as Brady said, it was so, you're putting in.
Frenzied.
It was insane. Yeah, a frenzy, a crazy, crazy frenzy.
Well, people were getting frustrated. They were getting beat out of deals. Finally, they're like, you know what? We're just going to take a break. Now you might be able to come back in. You might be able to find the house that you actually want rather than settling for something that maybe was just okay that was going to get you by. Yep. Now you might be able to find that house that you want, put in a reasonable, solid offer, and potentially get it without competing with 10 or 12 other people.
Yeah. And it's so awesome to be able to negotiate.
Yeah.
Negotiation, the art of negotiation is back, and it's great.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I tell clients, because they come with a mindset, because, the problem is they look at what the media says.
Right.
The media says, applications are plummeting. Well, of course, they include, refinance applications. Of course, those have gone down like 80%, 90%.
Don't
watch, refinance right
don't
now.
watch the media. Right now. Don't watch it.
No, do not watch it. Yeah, because... But the fact is, when I talk to clients, I say, the market's not plummeting. It's slowing down, but it's coming off an extremely hot market. It's becoming more normal.
There was no way for it to sustain what it was at. It was 33% a year for the past 2 years. It's insane.
It's really evening out. And as far as Ian goes, we have had some situations. We've had actually a couple of buyers that we put under contract with houses. I mean, there are a nice percentage of houses that probably have some kind of claim on their houses. So that's something that we're going to have to wait for.
Yep.
But there are also, if you're a cash buyer, it's a really great time to get in if you're okay with going in and doing those things yourself, because you can get a good deal on a home.
Yeah.
We put 2 houses under contract, and that was the situation. It's like.
Yeah, that's kind of what helped out. As I was kind of talking, I can't remember if we did this on air or not, but with after Hurricane Katrina, same thing. And that's kind of what the expectation is with Fort Myers, is that you're going to have a lot of cash buyers come in looking for deals.
Yeah.
Some minor repair problems or roof issues, which lenders can't close a loan if there's roof issues. So, but a cash buyer can.
Right, and you can quickly make those, do those fixes and build equity. So it's a great opportunity for cash buyers for sure.
Yep. Okay.
But yeah, otherwise, I think it's a great time to buy.
Yep. Okay. Awesome. Well, I think that's all I had. If anyone has any questions, feel free to give Brady or Jessica a call. You guys want to say your phone number in case somebody wants to reach out to you?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're the Sammis team. I'm Brady. This is Jessica. My number is 941-404-8498. And her number is 309-696-5460. But you can find us on all the social media accounts: YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, probably missing some TikTok. She's a social media guru, so she's everywhere.
Look up the Sammis team. You'll find us. We like to do lots of fun stuff on there.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for being here, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Scott.
You're welcome. Anytime.